And I'm very excited to have our See You Rise Up Next Generation Board come up. The industry is going through leadership transitions, and I want to think about it from the standpoint of what does that look like going forward. We know that recently we've had a ruling and discussion, or certainly pushback on the CDFI designation and forcing some cure status on applications based upon our democratic control and our field of membership. And so what we want to do is talk about what it's going to take to bring new board members into this industry. So let me invite up Stacy Walker. She just spoke to us here, and she is a board member with Excel Credit Union. Roxy Ostrom, who's a board member from Ventura County Credit Union. Michael Maxwell, a board member and board chair of SCE Credit Union. And our very own Sarah Bang, who now represents us as an advisor to NCUA. So thank you, everybody. And I'll turn it over to you, Stacey.
Thank you. It's an honor and pleasure to be here. It's an honor and pleasure to be here. As Sue said, I'm Stacy Walker. I'm with Excel Federal Credit Union, and we have with us 3 panelists today who will talk to us about next generation leadership, which is can be shortened to next gen, as people like to say. So when I think of next gen leadership, 3 words came to my mind: inward, outward, and forward. Inward speaks to who we are as members first, and then who we are as volunteers or employees in the industry. So inward will have us take self-assessment as to what we're doing, what values we hold, what we care about, and how are we acting upon that individually. Outward speaks to what's happening in our industry, what is happening at our credit unions, what's happening with our trade associations, with our industry partners, and what's happening in the political sphere as well. And we will also want to talk about how we're collectively advancing credit unions and setting the stage for the future generations. So in that aspect, we like to do a peer assessment. It's always good to have that, as we heard earlier, people talking about, are we hunting together? Forward sums up the direction in which we want to go. And it begs the question, what do we want our credit unions to look like in a future place and time? What solutions will we create today for our future leaders? As a earlier panelist mentioned, it's about forward thinking and removing barriers, mental barriers, if you will. So starting with looking inward, I would like the panelists to each share why they do what they do, because our history and our experience shapes our perspective on the topic of next-gen leadership. So Roxy, I'll start with you.
Thank you. For me, it started 50 years ago when my mom was on the board, and the credit union was the only institution that would lend her money as a single mom. So I watched this throughout my whole life, how they helped her, how she got on the board, and she helped people through the policies and whatnot that they made. I got on the supervisory committee in 1998, and so I'm on the downhill side of things as far as the board is concerned. And I'm happy to say that, because so often we have board members that this becomes their social club, their get-together once a month with their friends that they've been on the board forever with. And so somebody has to have that hard conversation with them and say, hey, listen, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time we need to make way for the new upcoming generation. We'll have board members that, I don't want an iPad, I don't want to work on an iPad, mail me that packet that's 300 pages long. I'll be just fine. Well, those days don't exist anymore. You need to stay up to date with the technology that's going on. So we started our modernization at VCCU in 2018. And we're still working on it today. It's ever changing, it's ever evolving. And you need to be sure that as individuals, that you're still willing to be always evolving. So I wanted to say we have 2 strategic plannings a year. The first one in the spring is primarily for the board education and governance. Last, February in DC, we had some great speakers at Underground, just really awesome speakers. I'm sitting there going, the whole board should be here. They would really benefit from this. I really think we need this whole board here. So I got with Sue and said, hey, these are the folks that we would like to talk to us, to educate us, to give us different perspectives from a board point of view. Can you put this together for strategic planning? And sure enough, she zoomed in all these people that I had the opportunity to hear at Underground in DC, and it was fabulous. It's not always having to have a high top guest speaker. This room is full of people that can give great advice, has great knowledge. We need to continue to use what we have in this room and go forward with this stuff. You have to stay relevant. You have to continue to put the member first and stay with that all the way through. And when you're done, say thank you and move on to the next generation.
Thanks for that segue. So I mean, to start, like the reason why I serve is because I get out of this as much as I put in, right? You know, I get to learn so much every single day. I started back on the supervisory committee of my credit union in 2014. I took over as the chair in 2015. The NCUA come in and asked me how old I was in 2015. I was like 27. I'm like, why does that matter? And they're like, do you know what you do? And I'm like, yep, I do. I do audits. But I mean, the bottom line is like the average board member is 70 years old in our industry, right? They know what it was 30 years ago to bank, right? We just had a great conversation about fintechs. Do you think that they know what fintechs are? You think what they know as far as those technology leaders are going to be doing? They don't. So how can you expect your credit union to move forward when your leadership and the voices on the board do not understand what's going on, right? And so the other thing is what we're starting to do, at my credit union is we're starting to do a self-assessment, right? Internally saying, okay, where are our strengths, where are our weaknesses on the board, right? And then once we complete that, then we're gonna target, hey, I need a marketer. I need an IT person, right? I need something in this space to actually make it work and make a difference, right? And maybe you don't have space on the board because you have long-term board members. That's fine. We're creating a board advisory role, right? That they can actually come in and listen and add their voice. They don't get a vote, but they get to come in, experience the credit union, and it also acts as a natural feeder to say, hey, when someone rolls off, hey, you already understand, you have a great voice, you understand us. How can I get you back there first? So I think we really need to understand when we talk about the next generation, it's not just because I'm young, right? It's because I bring a different perspective. I'm an entrepreneur, I have tech backgrounds, I have operations experience, but like we just heard, car loans are going away. So why do I need a board member who's the expert on car loans, right? I need a board member who's going to be an expert marketer or an expert in fintech to actually really drive the credit union forward. And that's why I think we're missing with boards, and we just need to go next time.
All right. That's very good. I think that's really great. Well, you asked why I do this. Sometimes I don't know, Sue. Some of you know I retired, how many years ago? 5 years ago. And lucky me, my former board chair from FSCC is in my hometown of Portland, or was in, came up, and he's now CEO of Unitas. And he says, okay, payback time. He says, would you like to, see if you could serve on the board of Unitas Credit Union? And I didn't make it to the board, by the way. I only made it to the audit committee, which meant that I could go to all the board meetings plus 4 of the audit committee meetings a year. It was awesome. I would not have this job today if I hadn't done that. And so I owe you not much. So let me just preface this. This is Sarah Bang, 40 years in the credit union movement. I know. Somebody back there earlier said, "You've done a lot," and I'm like, "Yeah." And it was kind of like, "You're so old," and in fact, I want you to know, I am the oldest person at NCUA. There's like 5 people that are older than I am, but really, I'm the oldest person there. So I try not to dress like that. But I have learned a lot being there, and it was such a blessing to be able to serve on the audit committee for this credit union. Because all these years being in trade associations and CUSOs, of course, I had all the answers, right? And what I got was a wonderful lesson in that I didn't have all the answers. And that when this stuff hits a credit union board, there's a lot of treading water, there's a lot of scrambling, there's a lot of fire drills, because if you've got a board that's even half aware, they are worried about, technology and things like that. So, but one thing I've seen, and this is just some potential advice, and this is to all of our credit union boards out there and CEOs, and that is making sure that your board understands the difference between a credit union and a bank. I never thought I'd have to say that. And Natalie, who's with us today, Natalie, wave, yes. So you got 2 regulators with you today. But Natalie has heard me say to people at NCUA, give me 5 ways that credit unions are different than banks. Oh, and by the way, if you say credit unions are nicer, you're fired. Because that is not, and I can't fire them, by the way. But knowing what a credit union is, and from the standpoint, we kind of danced around it when we were talking about collectively advocating, and I think it was Chris Kovacs who talked about it's all about convenience. Convenience, and I don't disagree with you, Chris, but convenience is in the eye of the beholder, and the beholder is the member, and your field of membership is your community. And so understanding, so I think we're dancing around this business about diversity on boards, right? What is your field of membership and what's your community? And so one of the problems I know some credit unions have in terms of getting diversity on their board is that some people can't afford to take time off during the day to come to a board meeting, or to read 300 pages of a board packet, Steve. No, I get it. Although I have to say, Payback was really great, because I used to send him 300-page board packets, and then I started getting these 200-page board packets, and I called him up and I said, "You're doing this on purpose, aren't you?" Anyway, but not everybody can do that, and so the question is, can we pay these people? And I know that that's not always, something, and I can't comment on it other than it's, there's got to be something in this for these folks if you want diversity. But knowing what a credit union is, and knowing, and I appreciate the training that there's out there, CUNA, NAFCU, all of these folks have wonderful training cues on what a credit union is. What would really help, and I see this at NCUA with board members, and what would really help is if it's described in real language, real, understandable. The people having the folks that are sitting across the table from the single mom, who you can see the tears, they have to make a choice on whether they get their kids, medicine or gas, right? And right now it's pretty bad. But the the people who actually see that and can communicate that emotion and what that means, that's telling the credit, I think it's telling the credit union story. Being able to say, this is, these are our owners. You know, these are our owners, and we have an obligation to take care of them. And I know that there's, there's a proposed rule out there about member expulsion. I'm not going to say other than, expelling a customer, kicking them out of your lobby is a whole lot different than expelling an owner. And so, treating people like their owners. And if they don't know their owners, that's not on them. That's on us. Do they realize? And and I've had this conversation with folks at NCUA. Do you know why credit unions, take longer to work out a loan or really, work on those things? Part of it used to be in accounting. Remember, some of you are old enough to remember when we had cooperative accounting in credit unions. Now we've got GAAP, which means you have to get rid of bad loans right away, right? But credit unions fight that. We're trying to help these folks and sending, getting rid of those loans without helping this member work that out is not the credit union way, and I'm not preaching. These are our members, and if they need our help that way, we need to give it to them that way. Then the other thing I just want to, these poor guys were like, oh God, is she ever gonna shut up?
She said she had nothing to talk about. She was
like, I have nothing to
nervous.
say.
That's right. Yeah, but the other issue, and Sue and I kind of go at this, there's a couple of us who go at this. Why aren't there more women CEOs at the top levels of credit unions? And I think it goes back to not all of us know what a credit union is. If you look at the lower asset ranges of credit unions, it's like 53% are run by women, right? But when you start getting up, well, who's hiring those people at the larger credit unions? It's not the other women in the C-suite, it's the board, right? And now, so take my comments earlier, and that is knowing what a credit union is all about, what it's like to serve some of these members. If you are on a board and you say to yourself, understanding the credit union difference is really important, we're going to ask every for the CEO to give us 10 reasons why and how a credit union is different than a bank. And if they can't give you at least 10, thank you, get out of here. And then, but who's going to be able to tell you that? People who come up through your organization, the people who've been making those loans. And since 70-80% of the employees in credit unions are already women, then we're going to start to see more women at the C-suite level. But our boards need to care about the credit union difference. So that's all I'll say.
Great comments. I want to touch upon the diversity aspect of it and how diversity can help credit unions to bring about change and modernize and to help credit unions propel forward. The pandemic, really accelerated modernization for credit unions and pushed us all forward, such that credit unions, when they didn't have plans, they suddenly found themselves making plans to invest in new technology, like the ITMs, the interactive teller machines, to work with their staff and allow for remote work from home, and to really have us thinking about what do we need to do to help the next generation of leaders. What do we need to do to help younger people, younger professionals to get their work done? And so I want to talk about age diversity and how age diversity can help credit unions to also modernize, if you will. When credit unions boards have a wide generational gap, it can be said that it's the younger volunteers that push for newer technology. It's the younger volunteers that want to talk about social consciousness. And they bring that to the credit union from the top-down perspective as opposed to the normal grassroots, like bottom-up perspective. And so when you think about, at least for me, when I first joined my board, I was 27 as well, finished with school and wrapped up a lot of things in my life, and I brought some new ideas, and I was excited. And the same 300-page board packet, I couldn't believe every month I was getting tons and tons of papers, and I said, this is just ridiculous. And so I asked for a central database, if you will, today would be a cloud, but somewhere that we could access these documents from anywhere. Why should I have to search through 300 pages to find something, and why should I have to figure out who to ask to then find something when I can do a search myself, just type in a keyword kind of thing. And I proposed it, and several times, and they said at first, no, we can't do that because of privacy, right? We discussed privacy earlier, how people want to protect people's privacy. And I said, at the very least, I'm asking for what NCUA puts on their website. And so they put information about every credit union on their website, and I said, I want that same information made available to the board members. And they said, we'll look into it, and they did, and it was cheap. At the time, it was like $200, and they made it accessible to everyone. And now we've further graduated years later. Now we're using cloud services to have our board packets. And people who didn't really work on computers per se, the iPads and the laptops, they now have to, and they've gotten used to it. So having diverse, younger leaders on your board can help you to modernize and bring about that modernization. So Michael, being that younger person, can you speak a little bit about that as well?
Go ahead.
Part of the changes that we've made is we went to a consent agenda. We worked with our CEO on dashboards, and she kind of gives us this look. I think we have 16 dashboards or something, but it helps with that board packet. Are we okay? Are we green? We're good. We're good. We're good. Oh, wait, there's something that's fallen now below. Okay, let's bring it up at the board meeting. So it helps you get through the packet a lot faster. And we use BoardPack, and we can go in there. Our board liaison puts everything in there. So we've got the bylaws, we've got addresses and birthdays, and we get it all. So it's nice to have it all in one area that we can go to at any time. The other thing we did is we set up charters, job descriptions, that's all in there. We went through our 1950 bylaws, which was shocking, and we just switched some words around that meant the same today, but boy, it was pretty crazy back in the 50s when they put it together. But you just got to stay on top of it. Listen to your younger board members. They've got great ideas, and they're fun ideas. You just need to continue to work with everybody involved, and you'll get there. Everybody will get there.
Yeah, and then also, it said, I'm a millennial, right? We care about things, right? Guess what the credit union does? We care about our members, right? But do you know who your member is, right? Do you know the makeup of your membership, right? I think I've been asking that question for my credit union for about 5 years now, right? Hey, we have all this marketing data. Where is it, right? Okay, well, finally, 3 years later, they're going to give me the data. Okay, cool, but I forgot my question. Right, and there was something important I asked for, and it's really being able to adopt that change. But when you have that marketing data and you know who your member is, you know the field of membership and you know the makeup, right? And then you can build a board off of that. So many times we hear it's a social club, or I brought in my friend, or hey, an open board seat came. Oh, I just know this other person. They're interested in joining. It's like, why are they joining? What are they bringing to the table, right? And it doesn't just have to be young. Right? It can be just diverse. It could be a membership. Hey, you're more Hispanic here. I need this demographic over here. Like this is my branch over here, right? To get to that, to actually get that whole perspective of your membership. But yeah, it's gonna cause conflict. I'm not gonna lie. With different voices in the room, you're gonna have you're gonna have a harder discussion. It's not gonna just be a yes board, right? I've seen us get into a trap where it's just been yes. Yes. Hey, everyone's friends. We're friends with the CEO. We're friends with all the exec team. We're just going to rubber stamp everything, yes, and then not hold everyone accountable, right? Well, those days have changed because we're getting passed by. And if we want to continue as an industry, we need to hold them accountable, and then we actually need to have that diversity of thought to actually push us forward.
And before we pass it on, I'm just going to ask a question real quick here. And that is, how do you ask somebody to step off so you have that opening?
I mean, there's a couple different ways, right? You could also implement term limits. Granted, people aren't going to term themselves out, right? So that's one thing, is more the fact of like, if you can start having that conversation, or you could put them in an advisory role. Hey, I need your valuable insight over here. Move them over to a different committee. Hey, because like obviously like we know with the CDFIs, like right now you have to have an advisory committee that matches your CDFI. Like we kind of scrambled, we have one, like it works, right? But maybe we say, hey, I need your leadership over here. I know it's going to take your time, right? I'm going to replace you on the board, but I'm going to really value your opinion, right? Moving forward to kind of just help them, and then they get that message.
And I just need to piggyback on what you just said about we can't all be friends, right? I mean, this isn't a social club, even though it may look like a social club at times. And one of the things that I'm seeing, it's really hard to watch a credit union that goes away because everybody was in a social club and they wanted to just go along. And we saw, one of the first things I saw when I got there was a credit union that had to be liquidated because of a fraud. And it turned out that the fraud was perpetrated by somebody that was brought in by a friend on the board and was hired to do some work for them, and had a rap sheet in the next state. And the board members were like, and I guess what I'm saying is that it's the power of one in your credit union, and you are the one. Even if you don't want to be, you have to be the one. If one person had Googled this guy, they would have seen that this person is a bad guy. One person, and the sad part of this was, and it was. You know, I remember telling the vice chair at this point, I said, there's a group of people here who have been with this credit union for 40 years, these board members, who their whole life now is ruined. The rest, all the achievements that they made for this particular credit union in their community is gone because not one of them stepped up and said, well, did we do a background check on the guy that we're giving all this money to? So being able to step back, and one of the things, and I think several boards I've seen do this before, and that is at the end of the board meeting, go around, you know how everybody just stops, you know, after the votes and nobody talks, but to go around after all the votes and saying, well, you know, how do you feel about that? Do you have any other thoughts about this? So what you do is everybody is going to be asked to speak. And I know it's uncomfortable, but everybody's got an opinion. And you know that because when you leave the board meeting, they're all meeting out by the trunk, right? So let's have that conversation in the boardroom. But, you know, if I could tell board members to do anything, is remember, it's the power of one, and you are the one.
Great comments. Looking forward, let's talk a little bit about legacy building. And thinking about the future, we have to think about the legacy that the next generation of leaders will inherit. And for some people, that's just not a hypothetical. It really is real, where they're ordering the steps of like their children and even grandchildren today to hopefully have them engaged in credit unions the next 10, 20 years from now. I think of people like certainly Sue and Brandy, who work together, you know, mother and daughter, and Sue is definitely setting a great example for all of us, but certainly for her daughter and for her children, her other son and her, you know, her grandchildren, who can one day, you know, join the credit unions and, you know, become involved. And they're small children now, but they see what the work that she's doing. They show up, they support her, you know, they're at the events, and so they're very well aware of what's happening. Even Stephen as well. You know, I see him on Facebook. He's posting that during the board meetings, he has a bond and a tradition with his daughter, and they get Starbucks and they talk, and you know, she's excited now about board meetings because this is connected to her father, and this is like something that she wants to engage with. So when we're thinking about legacy, I mean, for me, my parents, you know, they always relied on the proverb, train up a child in the way he or she should go, and when they're old, they will not depart from it. And so, Roxy, you know, you mentioned that your mother had joined the credit union 50 years ago. Can you talk about inheriting such a legacy, and what are some things to consider when we're really trying to say we want our children to inherit this and to be the next gen leaders?
You know, it used to be culture. We were afraid to bring people on because maybe they didn't fit our culture. Maybe they didn't think like we do. And that is gone. You need to put that behind you and move forward with who can bring what to the board. Who's going to be the best fit? I'm in agriculture by trade, and so I was excited when we brought Sulfa on. She's with the county, but she's with public health. And so that was an area that we've never tackled before, the health of Ventura County. You know, how do you bring, people have to want to help. They have to be passionate about the credit union industry. To be passionate, you have to be taught about it. You have to experience. Take your kids to some things. Let them sit in on some of the meetings. We've got a past board member that her grandson at the age of, I don't know, what was it, 2 or 3 years old, was sitting in on the board meetings because there wasn't a babysitter. Well, he sits on our board now. And he's young and he's enthusiastic and he thinks way faster than I do. You know, you just got to be sure that who you're bringing up, who you're talking to in the schools. We use a lot with our CEO will say, hey, I've met this person, maybe you guys want to talk to them. Our community development that's out there all over the place, use them. Say, hey, who do you know that has come by and talked to you guys about being in the credit union? Give them a call, see what's out there. But be sure to, number one, for me, it's member first. Anything that the staff brings to the board and says, hey, well, what about this? What about this? And the fee's only going to be this. And my CEO knows that she's going to get pushback from Roxy because fees. But these days, it's true. We need to make money any way that we can because it's being taken away from us. The courtesy pay, you know, all of the fees. We have to be more creative. But to bring those young people in, they need to know how we feel about them, how we can help them out in the community. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to go out there and stand on your board and preach about how good the credit union is and how many people we help in our community.
Okay, so that's a great way for us to transition here. I want to make one comment. I made this comment recently about the fact that we have legacy leaders. And there was a day a few years ago when somebody came up to me and said, oh, you're Brandy's mom. So there are times in our lives when these transitions happen, and that's what it's all about. People become the leaders. They are the leaders. And so, questions for our panelists? Yes, Brandy.
We couldn't have timed that better. So my question has to do with ensuring or pushing or ensuring accountability at the national level. So we're talking about diversity and next-gen boards at the credit union level. How do we ensure next-gen and diversity at our national associations, at our state leagues and associations, and our QSOs to ensure the boards are the same?
Volunteer.
Yeah, I mean, also, like, it's professional recruiting. right? I mean, I think that that's like the biggest thing. Like, you just named a bunch of things. Do most board members know that those are options and know that they can take their service one extra step? Or like, one of our credit union executives like can actually take that step, right? I think that we really lack professional recruiting in general for board members, but for associations, for everything. And it's really being able to formalize and that nomination process, formalize what that actually looks like to be able to go out in your communities and actually find the people who are actually going to serve and do a good job.
And I would say this, one of the things that, there are a lot of things I'm proud of working at the NCUA, but one of them is its track record with diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you look at the employee mix, if you look at the leadership mix, it's very diverse. And I can relate this in human terms. First time in my 35 years in the credit union movement that I could go by Sarah Bang instead of Sarah Canepa Bang, because nobody said a word about my last name. Every other job I've ever had in the credit union system, I was bing, bang, 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 other things, and so I stuck Canepa back in there. But I'm very proud of how NCUA does it, and it's very deliberate. And it's not easy, but it's very deliberate, and it's working.
So final comments? All right.
Final comments is that, we definitely need to invest in our next generation. We need to be intentional about it. And we can't just rely on the laurels of we do a good thing and, this would be a resume builder for young people and they should be delighted to come join us. So why aren't they doing it? We have to be more intentional about how we are attracting and retaining the next generation of leadership.
I just want to say, if you're looking for the next generation, these folks have families, they have soccer games, they have softball, they have all these other commitments to their family first. And we understand that. So how best can we entertain those people to come and spend some time with us? It's valuable. It's very valuable time. We don't take anything away from it. But that's a recruiting issue. How do we make it easier for those folks? And gosh knows that Zoom has helped tremendously, but there's nothing like face-to-face.
Yeah, I'll just take that one step further. It's just know your value proposition. I mean, right? Like, why do you serve? Who do you serve for? And what are they going to get out of that board too? Right? I mean, we're all volunteers here, at least for the board is concerned. Right? We're not getting paid, maybe yet. I don't know. I don't know. But, just more the fact of just make sure that we understand, and for each one of us, what is our value proposition and, what are we giving up for that time?
And the only thing I will say, this has been really fun and I'm very honored to have been on this panel. I will say this, when I'm talking to youngsters out there, the kids, and I tell them what a credit union is, you get this look and they're like, really? If we took the time to really explain to kids, the younger generation, the achievement that you get in your community and your group by serving these humans that need you, because they're not being served. If they were getting served by the banks, they'd be at the bank, but they're not. So the youngsters, I sound 65, don't I? But when you explain what a credit union is, just to see the reaction in their faces, and it's like, all right, would you like to serve on the board? When people are excited about it, and young people get excited about credit unions.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody.